In 1971, Stevie Wonder turned 21, and with that milestone came a decision that would change not only his career, but Motown itself. Up until that point, like many Motown artists, Stevie was a part of a system. Motown had a formula: talented artists, in house songwriters, producers, and musicians all working together to crank out hits. And it worked very well, but that formula also meant that most artists didn't have much say in what they recorded or how it sounded. But Stevie wasn't just any artist. He was a musician, a composer, a visionary. He had ideas Motown wasn't ready for, sounds that didn't fit the hit-making machine. So when his contract came up for renewal in 1971, Stevie took a bold step. He told Motown he wanted full artistic control. And here's the wild part: he actually got it. He renegotiated his contract with the help of his lawyer and business advisors, securing not only creative freedom but also ownership of his publishing rights, a rare move at the time, especially for a black artist. That deal gave him the room to experiment, to write, to produce, and perform on his own terms. What followed was one of the most groundbreaking runs in music history. Stevie dropped Music of My Mind in 1972, blending funk, soul, jazz, and synths like nobody else at the time. Then came Talking Book, Inner Visions, Fulfilling This First Finale, and the masterpiece Songs in the Key of Life. For all intents and purposes, these albums were statements: personal, political, and spiritual. Stevie addressed love, systemic injustice, black identity, and hope, all with unmatched musicality and soul. He brought synthesizers into R&B, layered complex arrangements, and made socially conscious music mainstream. And while Motown was built on control and consistency, Stevie Wonder's evolution forced the label to evolve too. So yeah, when Stevie Wonder fought for creative control, he wasn't just making moves for just himself, but he was more so opening the door for generations of artists to follow. He didn't just change Motown, he changed music as a whole. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Kanoa Speaks. We diving into the archives to bring you the moments from history that shaped the R&B and soul genres. Let's get it. When Stevie Wonder first burst onto the scene, he was just a kid, literally. He signed to Motown's Tamla label at the age of 11. He was marketed as Little Stevie Wonder, a young phenom with jaw-dropping talent. Songs like Fingertips made him a household name early on, and the label capitalized on his youthful energy. But like I said, Motown was a hit-making machine. Berry Gordy ran the operation with tight control, using in-house writers, producers, and the legendary Funk Brothers to craft a sound that was unmistakably Motown. Artists rarely had to input beyond performance. That was the system, and it worked for a while. But as Stevie got older, though, things started to shift. He was no longer that kid blindly trusting the machine. He started writing more, playing more instruments, and thinking bigger about what music could really say. He wasn't just chasing hits anymore. He wanted meaning. He wanted freedom. By the late 1960s, the world was changing. Civil rights, Vietnam, social unrest. Music was becoming a tool for expression. Stevie felt that deeply. But at Motown, social commentary wasn't really the priority at the time. The label still wanted the clean, catchy, radio-ready records. And Stevie wanted that soul, that truth, being able to experiment. He wanted that freedom. And now here's the twist. In 1971, Stevie Wonder turned 21. Now, why does that matter? Because at 21, his original Motown contract expired, and now he had leverage. That moment was huge. Instead of just re-signing and keeping the status quo, Stevie did something bold. Stevie walked away for a bit. He stepped back from the spotlight, even disappearing from the public eye for a while. What people didn't know was that behind the scenes, he was really learning, studying, taking more music courses, and building his own studio setups, and most importantly, planning how to come back on his own terms. He wasn't trying to burn bridges, but he made it clear: if Motown wanted Stevie Wonder, they'd have to give him control, creative, financial, and contractual control. And this was a major moment, not just for Stevie, but for every artist watching. He was about to prove that artists didn't really have to be just voices. They could be visionaries. And what he did next, that's where things really get wild. You see, in 1972, he returned with an album that sent shockwaves through the industry, Music of My Mind. Before that album dropped, he signed a new deal with Motown. But this time, he had full creative control. Motown gave in. We're talking full ownership of his publishing rights, control over his masters, and total say in the production process. That had never happened before at Motown. Berry Gordy had no choice but to give Stevie what he asked for. He knew the label needed Stevie more than Stevie needed the label. This was a chess move, and Stevie played it masterfully. When Music of My Mind dropped in March 1972, it was like nothing Stevie had ever done before, and nothing Motown had ever released. This was a concept album, a full-body musical experience where Stevie played most of the instruments himself: synths, clavs, drums, harmonicas. This was all him. He also partnered with visionary engineer Malcolm Cecil and Robert Margouleff, who introduced him to the Tonto synthesizer, a massive modular synth rig that lets Stevie sculpt new and futuristic sounds for the time. These weren't the background effects that you hear on the sound effect board when you go into a studio, or when your friend says that they got the studio and they just pressing the random sound effects. This ain't that. These were front and center, redefining what soul music could be. Tracks like Superwoman, Where Were You When I Needed You weren't written to please the charts. They were long, emotionally layered, and deeply personal. He was fusing soul with jazz, funk, and experimenting, and it wasn't just, when Stevie sings, he don't just sing. He speaks to you. He talks to you. And lyrically, too, Stevie was digging deeper. Love, loss, identity, vulnerability. It wasn't just the bubblegum pop, clean cut, catchy, radio-friendly Motown anymore. Things were really changing, and this was a grown man telling his truth unfiltered. Critically, Music of My Mind was celebrated. Some folks didn't know what to make of it at first because it wasn't really, like I said, radio-friendly. But the people who got it really got it. This was a signal to the industry. Stevie Wonder was no longer just a star. He was a pioneer. He was a trailblazer. And this win for Stevie shifted the landscape. Other artists started seeing what was possible. If Stevie could own his art, maybe they could too. And Prince would later follow that blueprint as well, for example. So would Marvin Gaye. The ripple effect was real. Music of My Mind wasn't really a commercial blockbuster, but it didn't need to be. It was a declaration of independence. It was Stevie saying, this is who I am, this is who I've always been, and I'm just getting started. And next up, he turns up the heat. After Music of My Mind, Stevie was just warming up. Later that same year, October 1972, he released an album that would take him from innovative to iconic. That album? Talking Book. And this was a sonic masterclass. Stevie had proven he could control his art. Now he was showing the world what that looked like at full power. He went ultra instinct. Talking Book kept the experimental edge of Music of My Mind, but it packaged it with hooks, grooves, and that emotional storytelling that hits everyone. It wasn't just made for the critics. It was made for the people. And the people responded. From the jump, it was clear this album had something special. The instrumentation, the lyrics, poetic and painfully real. Stevie was writing about love, heartbreak, spirituality, insecurity, everything that made us human. But he was doing it with style. He was doing it with flair. Superstition, for example, that clavinet riff is one of the most recognizable openings in music history. Funky, gritty, and undeniable. Stevie played nearly every instrument on it, but what a lot of folks don't know is this. Superstition was almost given away. Jeff Beck, the guitarist, helped Stevie jam out the early riff during a studio session, and Stevie had promised the song to him to record first, but when Berry Gordy heard it, he knew this had to be Stevie's single. It had too much fire to just give away, and Stevie agreed, and the rest is history. Superstition hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. It became Stevie's biggest single at the time and one of the most iconic funk songs ever. But Stevie didn't just stop with the funk. Talking Book also gave us You Are the Sunshine of My Life, a smooth, tender ballad that showed his range. That song also hit #1, 2 chart toppers on one album, both completely different vibes. Now that's the definition of versatility. The album was a complete commercial success. It was a turning point for black artists taking control of their sound. Stevie was showing the world that soul music could be high art without losing its groove. He won 3 Grammy Awards that year, including Best Male R&B Vocal Performance and Best R&B Song for Superstition. It was official. He was a chart topper, and he was an architect of a new sound. With Talking Book, Stevie broke the mold, and he melted it down and reshaped it in his image. And the crazy part was he still wasn't done. By 1973, Stevie Wonder was no longer just chasing greatness. He was greatness. With Talking Book, he proved he could dominate the charts and critics on his own terms. But for Stevie, that wasn't enough. He wanted to say something. And with Inner Visions, he did just that. Inner Visions wasn't about heartbreak or love songs. It was about America, about politics, about addiction, religion, racism, poverty, all of it. Stevie wasn't holding back anymore. He was really trying to use his art to challenge the system. Released in August 1973, Inner Visions was the boldest album Stevie had made yet. Still relying heavily on synthesizers, especially the Tonto system, he blended funk and jazz and even Latin rhythms this time and soul into one cohesive, powerful record. But this time the production was wrapped around messages, real ones. One of the most powerful tracks, Living for the City, a raw, gritty, and cinematic song about systemic racism, urban struggle, and the prison pipeline. Stevie didn't just sing about it. He put listeners in it. He included a whole dramatic interlude voicing multiple characters where a young black man from Mississippi is unfairly arrested and jailed in New York City. It was chilling, and for the mainstream music world, it was unheard of at the time. A major pop artist using his platform to expose social injustice? What? This wasn't just bold, it was revolutionary. Then there was Higher Ground, written and recorded in just 3 hours. It's a funky and urgent and spiritual record. It's a song about reincarnation, growth, second chances. Ironically, just days after recording it, Stevie was in a near-fatal car accident, and he fell into a coma. And when he woke up, he reportedly asked to hear that very song. It became an anthem of survival, both for Stevie and his listeners. The album also tackled religion with Jesus Children of America, drug abuse with Too High, and political disillusionment with He's Mr. Know-It-All, a thinly veiled critique of President Nixon. Stevie was really pulling no punches at the time. Critics called Inner Visions a masterpiece, and they were right. It won Album of the Year in 1974 Grammys, beating out heavy competition. Stevie also won Best R&B Vocal Performance and Best R&B Song for Living for the City. But more than awards, the album had an impact. It proved that music could really be a weapon, a mirror, a movement. And Stevie was at the center of it all. By the mid-1970s, Stevie Wonder was untouchable. 3 classic albums back to back to back. Grammys, chart toppers, social commentary, creative freedom. He had it all, and still somehow people were wondering, what's he gonna do next? What he did was drop an album so ambitious, so soulful, so layered, it's still considered one of the greatest albums of all time. The year was 1976, and the album was Songs in the Key of Life. This project was one of Stevie's hardest working efforts. Stevie took 2 years to make it, and Motown was sweating, boy. The world was waiting, and Stevie, he was in the lab chasing perfection. At one point, he even considered leaving Motown altogether to move to Ghana and work with disabled children. But he changed his mind, re-signed with Motown for a then record-breaking $13 million deal, and put everything he had into Songs in the Key of Life. And this was more than just your standard LP. It was a double album plus a bonus EP. 21 tracks in total. Stevie was telling every kind of story. Love songs, protest songs, lullabies, deep philosophical cuts. It was life through his lens. And that's very ironic, how perfectly a man could paint a picture from the perspective of his lens, from the perspective of a blind man. That is crazy to me. The highs, the lows, the pain, the joy, everything. Isn't She Lovely? I Wish, Sir Duke, all timeless records. And when it dropped, Songs in the Key of Life exploded. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, a rare feat, and it stayed there for 13 straight weeks. And it went platinum in weeks, and critics called it the album of the decade. At the 1977 Grammys, Stevie took home 4 awards, including Album of the Year. And let's not forget, this was the 3rd time he'd won Album of the Year in 4 years. Completely unheard of at the time. This man was breaking records. But his legacy goes way beyond awards, because Songs in the Key of Life became a blueprint. Prince, Beyonce, Kanye, Alicia Keys, and even hip-hop producers like Jay Dilla and Ninth Wonder have all cited this album as life-changing. And all of it, was made possible because Stevie fought for control. He proved that when you let an artist lead, magic happens. And he didn't just change Motown, he changed the industry. He showed artists that they didn't have to ask for permission to be great. Stevie Wonder's journey was about freedom, and the results were some of the most meaningful, emotional, and revolutionary art the world has ever known. That's why the story of his fight for creative control is one that still inspires generations of artists to this day. Let me know what you think about this video in the comments. Until next time, cheers.